We continue with the 25th chapter of the book of Yirmiyahu. Hadavar Sha'ir Hayal Yirmiyahu. Al Kol Am Yehuda Bashana Revit Liho Yakim Ben Yoshiyahu Melech Yehuda Yashana Rishonat Livnebuchadnezzar Melech Bavel. So this are words that came to Yirmiyahu concerning all of the people of Yehuda, and it's in the 4th year of the reign of King Yoshiyahu. That's when this is taking place. The 4th year of the reign of King, not Yoshiyahu, of King Yehoiakim, the son of Yoshiyahu. Okay, so if we're taking this, and it's the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar Melech Bavel, I believe it's about the year 605, 606, something of that matter. So yesterday, if you remember, we talked about that the chapter was probably around the year 593. That just is something we pointed out in the past. That's part of the reason why it says Hadavar Asher Hayal Yirmiyahu. Usually in the Tanakh, we have the Vav Hahipuch. It should say V'Haya Dvar Hashem El Yirmiyahu. That's the usual way. We start with the Vav. And when you're having narrative structures, when it starts with the noun and later has the verb, it means something is out of order. So this was years before that. We know the book of Yirmiyahu generally is not a book that is in order. It's not in chronological order. How it was composed, how it was put together, what chapters, I'm clueless, and I don't know. Somebody probably knows, but that person's probably in the heavens. So what is the message that comes now? Nebuchadnezzar, we talked about the north yesterday, or 2 chapters ago, we finally mentioned that it was Bavel who would destroy Bnei Israel. But this is the year now that Nebuchadnezzar is now reigning. Asher diber Yirmiyahu hanavi al kol am Yehuda al kol Yerushalayim lemor. When Yirmiyahu said to all of the people of Yehuda and Yerushalayim, Min shlos esrei shana liYoshiyahu ben Amon melech Yehuda v'ad hayom hazeh shloshim v'esrim shana hayad dvar Adonai elai v'adaber lechem ashkem v'daber lo shimatem. Yirmiyahu says, from the 13th year of the reign of King Yoshiyahu, and from that time, which is 23 years ago, the word of God has come to me. I've spoken to you, I've warned you, I've told you things that need to be done, and you did not listen. So here we have, right, there's still going to be another 20 plus years or so in Yirmiyahu's career, 15, 20 years or so, but he's right in the middle of his career as a Navi. Over and over again, he's warned them. They haven't listened to him, and now something is different. The prediction, the idea that Nebuchadnezzar, that the Babylonians are going to destroy Israel, is now much more believable because Nebuchadnezzar is on his way. It's not only Yirmiyahu who was sent. God sent lots of prophets, but you didn't listen. Lay more. What do those prophets say? Shuvu naish midarko rami roam alechem. When God said, turn back every one of you from your evil ways, your wicked acts. But you didn't. You didn't listen. And by the way, we're these about the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th word in this verse. Ishmi darko hara'a umeiroa me'alechem. We'll have words that are very similar to this that are read. We'll read Monday afternoon. When the people of Nineveh do tshuva, when they repent, and it says also that's part of the question people ask. Well, why do we read the story of Nineveh? Why do we read the story about Bnei Israel asking for forgiveness and doing tshuva on Yom Kippur? Well, the answer is that we don't really have as great stories of Bnei Israel doing tshuva. We have it from the people of Nineveh. We don't see it here, certainly in this book. There are times during the life of Shmuel and others, but not in the way that the people of Nineveh do, and certainly not in this book, where it's over and over again, you didn't listen. Continue verse 6. And you continue to vex me, says God. You continue to not listen. But you didn't listen to me. You angered me with your hands. Right, that's what you did to me by making idols and taking advantage of the poor, etc., etc. Lachein, ko amar Adonai tzvaot, yan asher lo shematem et dvarai. So this is what God, and again here he's God, the Elohei hatzvaot, tzvaot, the tzava, the army, the Lord of hosts. It's a threatening name. This is what's going to happen because you didn't listen. Hineni sholeach v'lakachti kol mishpachot tzafon nu'ma Adonai ve'el Nebuchadnezzar melech Babel abdi v'aviotim al haaretz hazot ve'al Yoshua ve'al kol hagoyim ha'ele saviv v'achrimtem v'samtim l'shama v'lastzreika u'lecharvot olam. I'm going to send the people from the north, led by King Nebuchadnezzar. How is he described here? Abdi, my servant. Nebuchadnezzar is doing the work of God. Think back to Bereshit, right? Avram sends Avdo, he sends his servant to go find a wife for his son. The servant has to listen to everything that Avram says. That's the idea. Nebuchadnezzar is listening to what God is saying. He is God's hand, which we've had here in this book earlier, allusions to it, but never before where it said fully Avdi. We had allusions to it with Sancheireb back in the book of Yeshaya, where the way that Yeshaya describes the Assyrian. And so it's just it's certainly noteworthy when we think about Nebuchadnezzar, think about Hitler's willing executioners and so many other things to think about just theologically and philosophically. And what's going to happen? He's going to destroy you completely. It's going to be ruins for all time. We're in verse 10. This is something we've talked about in the past that we have. It's again one of those verses, the undoing of Yeshaya. I'm going to banish what's going to be lost forever. The sounds of joy and gladness, the groom and the bride, even the sound of the mill and the light of the lamp. It's going to be completely destroyed. Everything, destruction fully, no happiness. And this land will remain desolate, and the nations will serve the king of Babylon for 70 years. By the king of Babylon, it doesn't mean King Nebuchadnezzar, but it means the kings of Babylon. 70 years is the first time where we see this phrase, this term, that it will be a 70-year exile. Whether 70 is supposed to be understood literally or not is questionable. The same way we have 40 very often in the Tanakh. 40 represents a generation. 70 more represents a lifetime. There's going to be a lifetime, and it's about 70 years, for about 586 to I think 517, 518, 516. I can't remember the exact year in which, under the reign of Darius, the Jews finally rebuild the second temple. But it is a 70-year period. But 70 means a generation. That's what it means. The world will be, Nebuchadnezzar and his army will be in charge for 70 years. V'haya kimlot shivim shana. And after these 70 years are over, you should know it's only 70 years. It's only a lifetime. The Chaldeans, the Babylonians, they will not reign forever. They, in turn, will become desolate. The message that we had so many times, especially in the book of Yeshaya, civilizations rise and civilizations fall. The Babylonians come in, they have their role, they'll be God's servants, but they will fall as a result of the destruction that they have committed to others. We're in verse 13. And I'll bring upon this land everything that I decreed in this book, which Yirmiyahu prophesied against or for all the nations. Because they will also be enslaved by other nations and great kings, and I will punish them. The consequences, the karma will come right back to them because of their conduct. So yes, in a sense, you could say that Nebuchadnezzar, that the Babylonians were God's hand, were God's messengers, were his avadim, but it has to be willing executioners. They will be punished for what they did wrong. And this is something we have in different places in the Tanakh. We talk about Yeshaya, of course, to the Assyrians. We talk about it in, I think, in Habakkuk and in other places where it talks about the nations. Yes, they will destroy Bnei Israel, but they too will be punished. Now we continue with the second half of the chapter. Kicho amar Adonai lo Yisrael, Elai kachet kos hayayin hachema hazot miyadi v'hishkita toat kol hagoyim asher anuchi sholeach otcha aleha. God says, take from me this cup of wine, this cup of my wrath. In other places, it's called a kos hatar elah, but it's a cup that represents God's wrath. It's going to be, in a sense, poured out. And all the nations whom I send to you too will drink of it. In the first chapter of the book of Yirmiyahu, we talked about Yirmiyahu being a Navi Goyim, not just to Bnei Yisrael. We talked this week about his prophecies to the people still in Yerushalayim in Israel, his prophecies to the community in Bavel that would return to Israel. And here we see now, beyond that scope, to the nations surrounding Israel and Bavel and in the region. Vishatu, Vihit Goashu, beinotam. They will drink and they will retch. They will throw up. They will go crazy because of the sword that I'm going to send amongst them. So it's not only Bnei Israel who's going to suffer as a result of Nebuchadnezzar and the great Babylonian army. It's going to be all the local peoples, all of the countries. So I took the cup from God's hand and gave it to drink to all the nations to whom God had sent me. Whether this is supposed to be understood literally, that Yirmiyahu really did it, whether he does it in a dream, whether he does it symbolically, it doesn't matter. Yirmiyahu is, in a sense, what God is predicting. Yirmiyahu is now foreshadowing in the actual pouring of the wine to the nations. We're in 18. At Yerushalayim v'tarei Yehuda v'tmelachev v'tzareh l'teitotam l'charbel l'shamal l'shreikal l'kolak hayom hazeh. So who does he start with? The people of Yehuda, the people of Yerushalayim. Its kings and officials will be, right? It will become a desolate ruin, this city. It's going to become a curse, an embarrassment. But let's continue. Yesterday, Mordechai, you asked about at Paro Melech Mitzrayim et kol avadav et tzarav et kol amo. The alliances to try to withstand the Babylonian assault. The Egyptians, they will also drink this bitter cup. And all the people in the land of Uz. So here we have in the Gaza region, right? Ashkelon and Gaza and Ekron and what is left of Ashdod. So everybody's going to fall. At Edom, Yet Moab, Yet Bnei Ammon, Edomites and Moab, Bnei Ammon. Those are mostly on the other side of the Jordan River. So we started with Israel. We went down south to Egypt. We sort of came a little bit back north to the Gaza region. Now we're crossing the Jordan River to the other side for the people of Edom, Ammon, and Moab. Vet kol malchei Tzor. We're going north into Tzor to Tyre. Vet kol malchei Sidon. Vet malchei Ha'i asher be'ever hayam. All the kings of Sidon, the kings of the coastlands across the sea, whether it means islands. We've had E used in different ways today. Iyim are islands in modern Hebrew, so it could be coastlands, could be islands. Vet Dedan, Vet Tema, Vet Buz, Vet Kol K'tzutzei Pe'ah. Right, Dadan, Tema, Buz, they'll have their hair clipped. Vet Kol Malchei Arav, Vet Kol Malchei Ha'erev, Hashochnim B'Midbar, all the kings of Arabia. And the kings of all of the, right, that have, it's like America, it has all sorts of different nationalities, Malchei Ha'erev, all the kings of mixed peoples who live in the desert, Vekol Malchei Zimri, Vekol Malchei Elam, Vekol Malchei Madai, Zimri, the kings of Elam, the kings of Media. The tradition says the kings of Media, Parasu Madai, is going to be, the Persians and the Medians are going to be the ones who actually defeat the Babylonians. Maybe the Babylonians defeated them first. I don't remember historically, I can't tell you. But in 539, with Belshazzar, that's going to be the Parasu Madai. Here it says Malchei Madai. Okay, who come and destroy them. Verse 26. So all of the kings, the ones north, right, all over, everywhere, wherever you think this destruction is going to happen. It's going to be everywhere. And lastly, it says the king Sheshach. Who is the king Sheshach? So there's an idea with Hebrew, something that's called Atbash, which is that there's sort of a coded language where the Hebrew words are reversed. So an aleph represents a taf, and a bet represents a shin, and a gimel represents a chaf. It's like a sort of coded backwards language. So Sheshach and Atbash, I think this is pointed out by the Radak, means Bavel, because the second letter of the aleph bet is a bet, second to last one is a shin, and the chaf is interswitchable in terms of the letters of the alphabet, the aleph bet, with a lamed. So what it's saying is, yes, the Babylonians are going to destroy everything, but just like it was said, verses above, the Babylonians, in the end, they will also drink. Revenge will come at them, and it will poison them as well. So we see here complete destruction of everybody, and then the Babylonians as well, as predicted twice. Verse 27. So say to them, right, drink from this cup, and you will fall, you will become drunk, you will vomit, and you will never rise again. That's how destructive it will be. And presumably it's talking to everybody, all of the different nations. And when they refuse, you tell them that God said, you must drink. This is what's going to happen. And in a sense, what that means, right? Don't resist. Remember we talked yesterday? Coming back to this, the people who left in 597, who went with Nebuchadnezzar the first time, Yechonia, And those others, they're the ones who Yirmiyahu tells them in the future, you will return, buy houses there, and then you'll come back. The people who refuse to drink, the people who refuse to accept the punishment, they will be destroyed. Because I'm bringing a terrible punishment to the name that bears my city, and nobody will be unpunished. Everybody is going to fall to the sword. You offer this prophecy to them and tell them God roars from on high and bellows from his high place. He roars over the earth, uttering shouts like Lucy treading the grapes against all the dwellers on earth. It's going to be God is roaring. God's anger is coming through. Interestingly, this verse describes God's crying out in the middle of the night. When we talks about early in Masechet Brachot about going up and waking up in the middle of the night to offer to daven. Ba sha'on ad k'tzei ha'aretz ki riv la'Adonai ba'goyim nishpatu l'chol basar r'sha'im natanam lacherev ne'um Adonai. Tumult, destruction has reached the earth because God has a case against the nations, and thus God will deal with all of the flesh through the sword. Ko amar Adonai tzvaot. Disaster is coming from one nation to the next. A storm is unleashed all over the earth. On that day, the earth will be strewn. It's going to be bodies everywhere. Think of apocalyptic paintings, not patience. There's going to be nobody more than God. There are going to be our carcasses everywhere. Cry out, shepherds, yell, right? Dust, to throw dust all over the place. For the days of your slaughter draws near. You will be destroyed into pieces like the falling precious vessel. Here it's called a kli chemda. If you remember a couple of chapters back, we talked about the bakbuk, talked about the jar that Yirmiyahu throws into many pieces. And so we see that again. It can never be put back. It's the glass everywhere. Flight will fail from the shepherds and escape the flock. Cry out, scream, howl, because God is ravaging the place where you shepherd. Mari atam. And the peaceful meadows will be wiped out by God's fierce wrath. Right? Today it's peaceful. You're out there with your sheep. They're walking around. Nobody knows anything. The weather is nice. It's not going to continue that way. Azav kakfir suko ki haita artsam neshama mipnei charon hayona umipnei charon apo. Like a lion, God has gone forth from his lair, and the land will become desolate because of his wrath, because of his anger. So we have here, a chapter of just destruction. Destruction is going to happen. The king is in exile, and therefore, because the king, in a sense, is in exile, destruction is going to happen. That's why Rashi sort of understands this line, leaving his lair, and it's just going to be a time of tumult, of horror, of destruction, and it's going to be for everybody. And we know that's the case. We know that violence begets violence. It's not going to stop just because it starts at the beginning. And so, yes, it starts perhaps with Egypt in terms of the causality or in terms of the significance of our book. It starts with Israel, it starts with Jerusalem, but everybody else is going to be swept up in the violence. And destruction is going to happen, and a new world order is going to start with Babel, and it's going to transform. It's going to be a different world order with the Persians, and then it's going to transform again with the Greeks. And so we have here really just a very difficult chapter, not one of the only ones, but an interesting chapter in the sense that, finally Nebuchadnezzar is named, and right, the sort of difficult theological and understanding philosophically, what does it mean that he is a servant, and what does that say about God, which is what the book says about God's violence and anger in this book. And just think for 1 second, compare it to, last thing we'll say, the book of Yonah, where Yonah, we'll read it on Monday, that's what we're talking about it. Yonah is going to say, God, you should kill the people of Nineveh. This is not truth. They were sinners. Why are you going to let them last forever? This is not emet. This is not truth. And God says, oh, you have all these people. Why should we kill them? Let's be merciful. God believes in tshuva. God believes in repentance. God in that book believes in second chances. In our book, is just destruction. And the simple answer is that the Jews, this isn't the second chance. This is the, 3,742nd chance or something like that. We don't know the exact number, and maybe that's the difference between those two. Hard to tell, but that's, one of the things about the Tanakh. Obviously, so many books over so many ages, there's not one way, there's not a sort of consistent theme in understanding the way God acts, the way humans act, et cetera, for further thought in the future.